And I am really excited to introduce to you Frances Morgana Stephens. And just as we touched upon earlier in the meeting, she's joining us from southern Portugal. So really a very wide global ICR conference for us this year. We are very excited to have Frances speak to us. Frances lives above the Santa Clara Reservoir in Santa Clara, which is in southern Portugal. She is a singer-songwriter, as well as the author of a book describing her own Samadhi awakening. So we're continuing right along in that theme of sharing personal experiences that will have an influence on the overall global evolution. Frances amuses herself, as she says, with painting and gardening and plenty of reading. And as long as she gets her 1 kilometer swim in every day in the Santa Clara Lake, she is generally a very happy person. And I love how she closes her emails. She closes her emails with love, light, and laughter. And I really think that, you know, love and light we all need, but we all need laughter. So thank you for sharing your love, light, and laughter with us. And welcome, Frances.
Thank you, Sabine. Thank you, Sabine. And thank you for everybody being here. And I wish I could hug you all. Many faces I've seen before. The three, Terry and Archana and Anne, I don't know how I can follow that on. I especially don't have any slideshows for you. So you have to put up with me for the whole 40 minutes. I'm essentially experiential and not a great student. My Samadhi was spontaneous and instant, and I became conscious of consciousness itself, great love light, intelligent, blissful oneness where all knowledge is available. I didn't go through any of the trials and tribulations that other people seem to tread on this Kundalini rising. So I have nothing to add in that vein to help anybody. And I'm also taking this talk very literally on its title, Spiritual Transformation and Health in a Changing World. So it's not about my experience, it's taking the theme very, very seriously. And I would like to say, firstly, that the long title to my presentation in my head is boiled down to the Shakti Shake-Up as a working title. And the Shakti Shake-Up is referring to the feminine energy flowing through thousands of years of rigid, insensitive structure, breaking it down and fracturing everything with chaos ensuing. Fears arising. Now we have viruses, vaccines, fears of vaccines, fears of virus, fears of those with vaccines, etc., 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 ad infinitum. Form and function break down, but the light flows like liquid through all of this chaos, bringing understanding of the blindness that led to our acceptance of almost everything we have done and still do, from our choice of food to the education of our children, our acceptance of choosing sticking plaster medicine over attaining actual healthy living practices, our acceptance of occupations that simply add to our problems, and our acceptance of those amongst us that utilize the energy of others in order to accumulate vast wealth with which they continue the destruction of Mother Earth. Finally, I will mention our acceptance of the huge military machine that is supposed to guarantee our peace. All of the individual events, both positive and negative, I think of as individual waves hitting the shores of our reality sphere, whilst the tide of consciousness is steadily on the rise. We may or may not have to live through some of the worst case scenarios as a result of some of those wave functions hit our shores, but must not lose sight of the vision of an equitable and attainable future that our collective consciousness has been building in our hearts and minds and souls, creating the necessary head of steam for a spiritual revolution, despite the onslaught of apocalyptic and zombie movies, etc. We're getting there. Well, in order to have any influence in creating a sane and healthy future for ourselves, our planet, and all of our fellow Terrans, in my little humble opinion, we firstly have to understand the soul lessons that we are currently involved in. We, as individual aspects of the unity, are involved in our own personal soul lessons, whilst also being immersed in the overarching soul lessons of humanity, alongside the soul lessons of Earth herself. We are only able to consciously co-create the venue of physical circumstances in which our soul lessons will be played out. Up until now, most people have been unconsciously creating their physical spaces, places, events, and relationships, all of which I lump together and call the venue. This is the theatre in which our soul lessons are brought to us to discern and learn before that particular venue is dissolved and another created for the next soul lesson to be deployed and worked through until learned. Some people, particularly over the past 2 decades, with the assistance of books and films and teachers, etc., have learned that a venue can be consciously co-created. Many have learned to build the physical lives they wish and desire. However, very few have the realization that co-creation of the physical life and lifestyle is only creating the theatre in which their individual soul lessons will still continue to be played out. On becoming aware that our soul lessons are ongoing and a constant life companion, a reality of our life in both physical incarnation and in astral form, a person begins to dig a little deeper to discover what their current life soul lesson may be. What lessons they and their loved ones and anyone with whom they have a relationship with may be currently in the midst of learning. Occasionally, these lessons will become obvious, as the same lesson or lessons have been playing out in a variety of venues for years on end. They were not completed or learnt, possibly because it simply never occurred to us that there was a lesson to be learning. Our soul lessons are to help us evolve our soul essence into a purified, strong, honest, reliable, just, discerning, and above all, kind spirit. Relationships are the most direct carrier of these lessons. And any relationship we find ourselves involved in will be using us as teachers as well as pupils. A very elegant solution for a school of souls, but unfortunately, one in which the vast majority of incarnated souls have completely forgotten that they are here for a reason. We all have amnesia. And instead, ceaselessly create scenarios that cause chaos and havoc and push any chance of evolving further away. Well, now we've come to a great pause in all of our ceaseless activity of chaotic creativity due to a minute virus. Oh, as an aside, it appears that life owes many of our evolutionary leaps to varieties of this humble virus. How this particular virus and its subsequent mutations came to be amongst us belongs to a completely other discussion, so for the present moment, we allow that it simply is. For whatever reason, our human worlds of desiring, planning, performing, and ceaselessly doing came to a sudden and unexpected halt. It did not stop completely. The normal speedy decision-making process was at the very least slowed down. By slowing down, millions of us worldwide became more self-reflective and began to look inwards. I've talked with many people over the last year and a half who have experienced cathartic releases of buried emotions and memories. People who've remembered events and people from their distant pasts. People who they now realize shaped their realities and helped them to forge the paths that they have trodden that eventually led them here into this present moment. People have been recovering and expressing deep emotions of all kinds: grief, regret, love, anger, resentment, hatred, etc., etc. A great wave of cathartic energy has engulfed the human energy system simply by slowing us down. This is a true reset of humanity. It is being played out in every heart, mind, and soul. Not the great reset of Thierry Mallet and Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. Whatever future we build for ourselves will be determined by the lessons we all learn during this slowed down rest period that we've been gifted. Hopefully, we will all wish to retain a slower, more reflective pace into the future and try to remember that we are always participating in a soul lesson. A clearance event is what we've been going through, a chance to finally learn lessons that we've been simply repeating because we did not understand that there were lessons to be learned, a catch-up time. Hopefully, many now will be aware that there are lessons hidden in plain sight in every daily event, and that we are able to co-create our physical reality in order to have more convivial circumstances in which to learn our lessons. My point here is, firstly, we have to be aware that there is always a soul lesson in play. And our first task is to discover what that lesson may be, because then it becomes easier and faster to learn it, and we can progress to the next lesson. Secondly, realize that everyone around us is also involved in learning their own lessons, as well as involved in revealing to us what our own lesson may be. Some call this being our mirrors, but there's a lot more to it involved than simply mirroring. It's often easier to see what another person's lesson may be than it is to perceive our own lesson. So if we form relationships with people who are aware of participating in soul lessons, we can genuinely help each other to see and understand the lessons to be learned and support and help each other to learn them. I wish that could be a more uniform thing in the world, meeting people who understand this. Well, the first step in any initiation is usually isolation. We've had plenty of that. Some kind of withdrawal from the world of our ordinary everyday lives. This is so that we can confront the changes taking place in our bodies, minds, and souls, and allow transformation into our life. Isolation also helps us to come to terms with letting go of everything that no longer serves us, whether a physical thing, a grudge, negative emotion, or a relationship that is no longer allowing for growth. To come to terms with whatever within is dying and needs to make way for something else to be reborn. People who refuse to honor their inner demands for solitude and contemplation often become ill in order to force this need upon them. And monks and nuns are frequently criticized for failing to have the courage to live in a normal world of constant interaction, whereas in fact the solitude and silence can transport us face to face with the deepest levels of our own beings, and this takes much courage. Until we learn to use prayer as a means of communicating our gratitude, it remains a double-edged sword, a very dangerous thing. Many people still use prayer in order to ask for the things that they believe they want, which is often money, in order to carry out some desired project or buy some desired object. Well, we often do get what we want, what we ask for, only to discover that it matters very little what project we embark upon or what object we purchase, our soul lesson will still be with us and still be played out within the context of the desired objective. Well, now, as it's in the title, I would like to talk a little about left-handed Tantra. And I might disappoint you here because Terry, in her talk, did suspect that it might be all about sexual practices, but I'm afraid it isn't. Not from me. Okay. This is a term from Buddhist and Hindu tradition, and it relates to a distinctly feminine form of wild energy. In Sanskrit, the term Vamacara is often translated as left-hand practice. Vama, apart from the meaning left, also means woman. So it could be termed a woman's tantra. There are many explanations of why and how tantric practices divided up into a right, Daksina, and a left-hand path, Vamacara. But I do not understand enough about explaining them further. I think we'd have to talk to Anne or to Michael, or maybe to Terry to explain what happened there. But what I would like to add is that Vamacara is particularly associated with the Panchamakara, or the 5 M's, also known as the Panchatattva. In literal, simple terms, because I'm very simple, I should say the 5 M's are Madhya, wine, Mamsa, meat, Matsya, fish, Mudra, burnt or parched cereals, and Mathuna, sexual intercourse. Mudra usually means ritual gestures, but as part of the 5 M's, it holds the meaning of parched or burnt cereals. And I don't know, but I suspect that our daily bread is included in that. Rather than simply germinating wheat to eat, we bake cereals, thereby probably destroying much of the life energy of the wheat. Well, Vamacara traditions place strict ritual limits on the use of these 5 M's and warn against unsanctioned use, saying that if so used, they encourage the person to sin. If we follow this logic into today's world, where huge amounts of animal flesh, the flesh of fishes, mounds of monoculture cereals, and gallons of alcohol are consumed every day, as well as continual non-respectful and abusive sexual intercourse, it is fairly obvious to see how, according to left-handed Tantra, Vamacara, we have strayed completely into the realms of karmic sin. Vamacara, left-handed Tantra, is for each individual to find their way to truth and guidance without recourse to a priest or government decree. On understanding that certain substances cloud our communication system to higher guidance, we willingly abdicate or restrict the intake of these substances and actions, allowing the numinous energy, the Shakti, an energy without a conceptual framework, to reveal what it will to us. Left-handed Tantra has no regard for personal comfort or protection of the ego. Instead, a great luminous possibility is revealed from which anything at all could be brought forth. The unrelenting scope of possibilities turns most of us into quivering heaps. We are, after all, accustomed to guidelines for everything. Go-do-do. When to eat, sleep, drink, wake up, travel, work, relax, sleep, even when and where to make love to our partners if we have one. But when these guidelines snap, suddenly, as I've done in the COVID era, vast amounts of people are thrown into the equivalent of left-handed Tantra, without the proviso of understanding that we should look to the substances that we put into our bodies and the respect we should be offering each other as fellow humans and Terrans, Without this knowledge, the access to our spiritual guidance is still limited. As we become more reflective with all the time on our hands, and I have to excuse myself here, as some people obviously have not had the advantage of more time. Anyone on the front line, doctors, nurses and carers and porters, and all the emergency services, as well as those keeping the rudiments of our society together, they haven't had much time. But those of us who've been lucky enough to have more time on our hands, hopefully will become more conscious and find the will to make the changes that each individual life needs to make, and to assist in the great changes we need to make to our nations and our global community. Huge amounts of creative energy are being released daily, new solutions to old problems found and developed. Some people will remain stultified by sudden access to extra time and freedom from the normal daily hypnotized state of habitual life. And this helps bring to the fore the questions surrounding human freedom and the constraints that economic and political forces lay upon us in varying and differing amounts from nation to nation. What will emerge from the experience of apparent chaos?
Frances, on that dramatic note, I'm just going to let you know that we're about 20 minutes to go, so 10 minutes until questions start. I know you wanted to do some practice with us.
Thank you. Well, hopefully, an understanding of the great natural order that operates beneath our wings, whether we're conscious of it or not, the great, loving, compassionate intelligence that underlies our existence as souls, whether embodied or in astral form. Even as we feel all but dissolved in chaos, there is an unseen hand guiding our understanding to come into flower. The caterpillar to emerge from the cocoon as a wonderful butterfly and spread her virginal wings in flight. To where and what ends will only be revealed in time to each individual who successfully makes the journey. Whilst in the melting pot of Vamacara, it is necessary to become aware of not allowing others to leech our personal energy, or for us to leech the energy of others. On the physical level, one can become aware that our personal energy is being tapped off as our immune systems weaken and allow sickness and depression to intrude upon our normally healthy systems. It is important to ensure that we have healthy relationships where individual boundaries are talked about openly and not transgressed. It is important to know what is important to ourselves and let those things be known to anyone we have a close relationship with, so that resentments and hidden negative thoughts do not build up and cause health problems for ourselves and others. It's obviously equally important to open up and listen to the boundary needs of others without becoming defensive. A simple shamanic practice to follow, they fall away and you become aware that your personal energy is being leached or someone's trying to control you in some way, is to visualize a large egg and fill it full of light. I personally use gold and silver and violet to color my egg. It's quite a nice experience. Anyway, and then I say internally or aloud, I'm normally alone, so there's no problem speaking my mind. I will not give up my soul energy to you, or any other words that feel appropriate to maintain your inner peace, your inner space. A main feature of the Tantras is respect for women as representatives of the archetypal energy of Shakti. In Shaktism, Adi Parashakti is worshipped as the supreme being, primordial cosmic energy or primordial inconceivable energy, and represents the dynamic forces that move through the universe. Shakti is simply a personification of the energy that is creative, sustaining, and sometimes referred to as auspicious source energy. On every plane of creation, energy manifests into all forms of matter. Therefore, all matter is born from the thoughts of Shakti, or the energy, the numinous energy. Her true form is just this incredible love light, intelligent love light that flows through, and each one of us is a spark of it that is able, by intention, to turn that thought into matter. We are matter creators ourselves. It's magic. The opposing, I shouldn't say opposing, the right-sided Tantra, or what has been followed by generations of males conforming to the status quo of accepted behaviour and traditional practices. This is named Daksinimarga or Daksini-Arga, or Daksini-Kara, which simply means right-hand practice. It's used to refer not only to orthodox practices, but to modes of spirituality that accord with Vedic injunction on a generally agreeable to the status quo. In other words, left-handed Tantra rocks the boat. Even after a period of relative normality ensues, after all the isolations and lockdowns, etc., it will be a great help if many of us retain the habit of alone time for meditation, walks in nature, relaxation, swimming, gardening, playing or listening to music, singing. Things that enable our souls to simply be. Taking time to take care of ourselves and our environment. The transmutation of any kind of energy into healing energy for yourselves or others on our planet is also a useful learning path. The days of isolation have brought about a massive upload of suppressed subconscious material into conscious awareness for unprecedented numbers of people all at once. An amazing opportunity to deal with so many buried emotions from our pasts. COVID-19 is acting as a great karmic clearinghouse for our subconscious, allowing past anger, resentments, losses, grief, sadness and pain to surface in order to be dealt with in the light of consciousness. We will hopefully find ourselves living more and more in the present moment, listening more closely for guidance from within, without obsessing over the past and or worrying about the future, seeking out the events and people that bring us the highest joy and the greatest sense of meaning to our lives. All of the energy that was used in obsession and worry can be released into our passion for living a creative freedom in the now. For thousands of years, we have built and increasingly imprisoned ourselves by external structures and frameworks to live within. Poof. Governments to guide us in our physical and mental pursuits and divide us into nations. Education systems to ensure that we all learn the same things and do not stray too far into the unknown. Medical systems that use external and invasive means to heal us from our various complaints, ensuring that we do not seek into inner causes and or cures. Churches, temples and priesthoods to keep us on the straight and narrow pathway, ensuring that the guidance we receive is pretty much orthodox and an exterior source, thereby making it unlikely that we listen to or trust our own inner guidance. We have military systems to keep us safe from our own fears. Huge agricultural corporations producing and distributing our foods, practically dictating our diets and usually bearing no relationship at all to the needs of our bodies to be energetically tuned to our localities and our seasons. The global banking system that offers us a ready-made value system that encourages all of humanity to aspire to wealth in the form of some kind of currency, rather than evaluating the health of one's lifestyle, relationship, environment, etc. We have imprisoned ourselves by allowing external structures to rule our lives. Now, Vamacara energy is globally abroad. Shakti energy in the form of a microscopic virus burst into evolutionary action. All the frameworks begin to crumble, both externally and internally, within our own consciousnesses. like butterflies emerging from the constriction of the cocoon that we wove ourselves whilst we were hungry, all-consuming caterpillars gnawing away at the world. We are breaking forth into a nectar-eating world where we shall learn to listen and act upon our internal guidance. Our internal guidance system, it works very well if you live in a quiet place, you know, very well indeed. One rule to follow is that true guidance is always kind. Always kind. It may be blunt and difficult to follow through, but it's always kind. So, fellow butterflies, as our cocoon dissolves around us, we can recycle and reuse the remnants of both the physical structures we have built and also cherry pick all of the great parts of the tangible and intangible forms we have created. I feel sure we will have hospitals, schools, fire departments, spiritual gathering places, etc. We simply need to recreate them for human butterflies receiving personal inner guidance and learn to respect each other. As we live in a time when the old powers that be are doing all that they can to keep their hierarchical systems in place, amongst a rising tide of individual consciousness, it's like making a dam against a river. A dam works well unless it never stops raining. If the rains continue to fall, the dam must be built higher and stronger, ad infinitum. Of course, it will inevitably topple or overflow from the ever-rising waters. And we are that rain, and we will keep raining. Thank you for listening. I think I may be actually very punctual, and we have 10 minutes for any questions. If you have any, I can't promise I can answer them, obviously, but I will try if you have any. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Frances. We will see whether any questions have come in. Very interesting to listen to your perspective on what's happening in the world today. And also interesting to just see the connection of how ancient all this wisdom is and yet how applicable. That's something that's carried through the talks all day today, right? How ancient this wisdom is and how much needed it is in today's day and age, and how relevant we can make it by having speakers like you and the other speakers this morning to show us how we can apply this wisdom. So lots to absorb. So far, I believe there are no questions that have come in. I think everyone is still absorbing your very personal and creative talk. So we can just even sit here in stillness for a moment.
Or I can just add another couple of little things if you would like.
Or you could sing for us. Yeah,
oh, I haven't got my guitar with me, but I could do. I'll just carry on like this, and life is simple. We're born into it to care for ourselves, for others and the earth, and all who dwell upon it. To depart from this life with no unfinished business or uncompleted projects, leaving any remaining responsibilities to others who are willing to take them on, and leave with gratitude and love for all we have learnt and have been able to accomplish would be a fine aim. Within this simple framework lie our lessons for individual soul evolution. Our life choices affect our spirit and our health. If we walk in honesty and love, our spirits and bodies stay strong and true. If we weave our spirits into negative choices, we can expect negative outcomes for ourselves. Then we need to stand back and reappraise our lives and our stance. We do weave our spirits into the events and relationships in our lives, much like we weave a blanket or other intricate or simple design. We need to stand back and look at our blankets. This can mean evaluating our health, our environment, our relationships, our creativity, etc. Take a look at how our blankets have woven themselves in the past, and consider if we could make a more pleasing, warmer, more beautiful continuation of the weaving process into the future. We cannot unpick the blanket we've already woven, but we can definitely change its ongoing fabrication. And I think that's where we're all going to pick up now as we assimilate the things we're learning and the things our conscious is bringing up to us in this pause time. I think we can move forward as one human race in a new era of awakening. I pray this is so. Namaste.
Thank you, Frances. I think that is a beautiful note to end your presentation on. And we fellow butterflies shall continue to evolve with you. That's a lovely thought. Many, many lovely thoughts that you've shared with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frances.